Hello, we're back. Lewis, actually, I think this is the first one I've done with someone in over a year.
Really?
But hey, I'm excited to have you. My name's Thomas. I'm the lead speaker or listener on Muscles and Nonsense or the M.a.N podcast. Today I am blessed with the pleasure of Lewis. And Lewis, I was thinking about this just before I came on. We've known each other maybe like a year and a half, 2 years,
Yeah, about that.
but only ever been able to speak when you were in work.
Yeah.
Only ever had little conversations when you've been at work. Um, I was going to try and give you like a little introduction on a couple things.
Uh,
However, you are a bit of a man of mystery on the old Instagram. Everything is coffee orientated, so if you don't mind telling everybody a little bit about yourself, and then I'll just ask a couple questions and we'll just see where we go.
yeah, cool. So yeah, my name's Lewis. I'm a barista. I've just recently moved to Edinburgh. Me and Tom know each other from my time at EH9 in Dundee, where I was most recently head barista for about 18 months, I think, about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lived in Dundee for quite a while. Went to uni there, stayed after COVID, and then yeah, just have now kind of ended up in Edinburgh. That's kind of me.
See, this is what you're like. And if anybody knows Lewis, they'll all be like, oh, why is he not telling us about this? Why is he not telling us about that? So anybody and everybody listening will be able to tell that Lewis doesn't have a Dundonian accent.
Yes, correct.
So, can you tell us a little bit, Lewis, about where you're from and what the script was
Okay,
or why you
perfect.
chose Dundee Uni?
Well, so my accent, I grew up like 10, 15 minutes outside of Dundee in Fife. I went to school in Cooper. Like lived there from the age of 4 or 5, I think I was, until I moved to Dundee for uni. But before that, I was born in Lewisham in southeast London. That's where like my mum's from, and then that's where my accent comes from as well. Uh, and then yeah, so finished school at 17, 18, moved to Dundee to study product design at Duncan of Jordanston, because anyone who knows anything about Dundee Uni or DJ CAD, Duncan of Jordanston, whatever you want to call it, know that it's like a very, very good university, or very, very good art college within the University of Dundee, particularly for like design subjects. So yeah, moved there, studied there for 4 years, and then stayed in Dundee for another like 4 years after that, with a little hiatus in Fife for about 8 months.
That's class. So
From the riches to the rubble.
that's class. So can you talk us a little bit about like what was like the transition, the story, or the even like the relationship between product design to becoming lead and head barista?
So it's actually, I got into coffee, I guess depending on the way you look at it, I kind of got into coffee because of my like studies. So I graduated in 2020. I was a lockdown graduate, and so obviously COVID happens. Everything's locked down. Anyone who graduated from a similar course at the time knows that design jobs were kind of in short supply. So I kind of thought to myself, like, right, I was working in a supermarket at the time, just to kind of keep myself going, and it's kind of like, right, I need to, like, so that I'm not just stopping and standing still, I need to do something. So I started like working on a portfolio, just doing like little kind of projects to myself, and I thought I'd read this book called The Design of Everyday Things, or Design of Everyday Objects. I can't remember exactly. But I thought to myself, oh, cool, like, what if I do a little part of my portfolio, like, look at everyday kind of household objects, how can I redesign them, think about them in an innovative way. So what do I use all the time? I use a kettle every morning to make a cup of tea. or a cup of instant coffee. So started looking at kettles on like Pinterest and making like mood boards, and I found this kettle with this weird like long thin neck. I thought to myself, what's that? That's fucking weird. So like kind of got distracted whilst also probably procrastinating. Went down this rabbit hole trying to find out what this kettle was and what it was for, because at first I thought it was a watering can that someone had like tried to make it look like really modern. So I started looking into it, and then it was the Fellow Stag EKG temp control kettle, whatever. I'm like, what's that? So looking, it's for brewing these like fancy looking filter coffees. And me being quite a curious person, I was like, what are these like filter coffees? So I looked into it and then found, I think about like 2 hours in, found out who James Hoffman was, as everyone who gets into coffee does. Watched a couple of his videos. I was like, this is cool. This is interesting. So then bought myself a little plastic V60 and a bag of coffee from, what's that coffee place in Dundee called? Braithwaite's?
Yeah.
But yeah, I went to Braithwaite's and bought some coffee, and then just got into, and then basically just from there it just kind of spiraled and I fell down the rabbit hole, and then just got more into it, and then I had originally applied for a job at EH9 that was just like part-time. It was like 3 months after they'd opened. I had never worked in hospitality. I'd kind of been into coffee for like just over a year at this point. So I just applied just because I was like, yeah, fuck it. And then had a chat with Fraser, got the job, and then that's it. Kind of just like went on from there. I think my interest from coffee as like a home brewer, then I was able to take that kind of knowledge and then apply it into a professional setting, and then I just kind of fell in love with it, to be honest. And then kept working, went to full time, and then eventually Fraser offered me head barista, which I accepted.
Yeah.
And then that was that.
Okay, I knew I was going to have to force all of this out as well. So right, you went from being very good at brewing it, making it, and just serving it, to now, come on, tell everybody a little bit about the latte art, the little designs that you're... Come on now.
Yes.
The little bit about that.
So when I started at EH9, I'd never used, obviously I'd never worked in hospitality. I'd never used a commercial espresso machine. Had never done latte art. I remember on my interview, Fraser said, "Oh, do you want to make a coffee? Have you used one of these machines before?" And as soon as he says that, I think to myself, "Well, that's me fucked it, because I don't know how this works." But brewed the espresso, steamed the milk. It looked awful. And then when I kind of started, it was very much like, okay, cool, we'll ease you into latte art. Because latte art's one of those skills where I think you can do, you can book yourself into these hour-long sessions where a trainer will kind of tell you, yeah, this is the kind of milk texture you're looking for. This is how to use the steam wand to that part of the machine. These are the kind of basic movements you need to create shape. But it's a really difficult skill to master unless you're doing it 100 times a day. So for the first 6 to 8 months at EH9, I didn't make very many milky coffees. I would dial in coffees and do filters and stuff. And just every now and then when I could, I would make myself a flat white and try a bit of latte art. And then one day it just clicked. I tried something. I think I tried to do a swan or something, and I'd barely mastered anything at this point. And then it just I did it, and it just worked. I was like, cool. It's I kind of get it now. And then from then on, just kept practicing, improving it. And then there's these things for people who don't know, who aren't kind of connected to specialty coffee. There are these little competitions and events that are hosted around different cafes called latte art throwdowns. And they're almost as silly as they sound, where you literally, a team of baristas, a load of baristas turn up, they get, maybe there's a spinning wheel that has a load of shapes on it, and it's right, spin the wheel, 3 stack tulips, a tulip with 3 like layers to it. You've got to do it. Whoever makes the best one wins. So when I became head barista, I went quite hard on trying to enter any latte art throwdown I found. Even when the first one I did was in Edinburgh at Cairngorm. It was sponsored by Minor Figures, and at this point I was terrible at steaming oat milk, and I think I got a Rosetta as my shape on the first round, and genuinely half of the milk just went straight underneath and the other half just turned into a little like irregular blob. And it was like, yeah, put that down. It's like, hello, I'm the new head barista at EH9. This is what I can do. But yeah, so did that, and then that, I think I got better over time. I don't think I'm amazing at latte art compared to I work with some people now who are just unbelievable at latte art, like so consistent. They can do shapes that I like can't do, but yeah, it's just a bit of fun. But basically earlier on in the year, before I moved to Edinburgh, I had entered myself into the UK Latte Art Championships that were doing the first ever heat of that competition in Scotland. So that was at Glasgow. I'm pretty sure you were there as well to watch that, I think, weren't you?
I came at the Glasgow one.
Yeah.
Was that this year or last year? This year. That was this year, wasn't it?
That was this year, yeah.
Yeah. I was there.
Yeah. So I did that, and that's a completely different ball game where you have to turn up with 2 like pre-prepared shapes and then make them in a kind of time limit with certain equipment. There's all these kind of different rules and regulations that you kind of have to work within, and then make obviously quite complex shapes because it's supposed to be a presentation of like the best latte artists in Scotland, i.e. the UK. But I did that. I didn't get enough points to get through to the next round, but that experience was incredibly interesting, just to be involved in that sort of very formal competition. For people who don't know, there's these little fun little like latte art throwdowns and little brewing competitions that happen kind of all over the UK. Yeah, that was me.
For everybody watching.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you can't even do it justice because there's like such fine lines between it, and the details just so. For anybody that's, yeah, I knew I had a photo of that. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. But yeah, there's these little competitions like the throwdowns and little brewing competitions and stuff. But there's the kind of governing body of specialty coffee, like the SCA, which is Specialty Coffee Association. They kind of run these competitions. There's national competitions, so like UK-sided UK Latte Art Championships. There's Barista, so UK Barista Championships, and then one called Brewers Cup, which is all about filter coffee. There's also a cocktail making one called Coffee and Good Spirits, which is easily the best name out of all of them.
Yeah.
But you have to make like cocktails that involve like a coffee element, and then whoever wins, the winner of each national one, they happen all over the world, then go to the World Championships that's held like once a year. So this year, a few of them were held, like the latte art one and the roasting one and the Coffee and Good Spirits one were all hosted in World of Coffee at Copenhagen. So I got to watch them when I was there. That was really interesting. But yeah, just to be part of that competition on a national level in the heats was just very eye-opening to kind of like, oh, okay, cool, this is the standards that I need to try and reach. Yeah, it was really, really good fun.
Class. And right, so we know that like EH9's in Dundee, people that listen to this, we've actually had Fraser on the podcast, and that was Dundee. And now in Edinburgh, like, are you? So the thing that's cool, like when I watch you, like when I see your social media, because you've got such a skill that's like, how do I explain this? It's like it can be universally enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it seems like you're able to go to different roasters, you're able to go to different coffee shops, and is there a thing called like guest brewing? Is like I'm not sure, but it seems that like are you based somewhere and then can go to multiple different places and make a coffee and people are excited to see you? And can you kind of talk a little bit about that world?
Yeah, so me personally, I work for a cafe. So I work for a cafe called Lowdown. Lowdown kind of specialize in like very, very high quality and very modern style like specialty coffee. So it's very, very light roast, kind of experimental processing, lots of coffee from Colombia, using some of the best equipment that you could do. It's very much a kind of like, how do I say it? Yeah, it's like you go to Lowdown because you expect, like before I worked there, I would send people to Lowdown if they said they were going to Edinburgh for coffee. I would say you go to Lowdown and you know that you're going to get a cup of coffee made from you from a raw product which is incredibly high quality, but an immense amount of care and consideration will have been put into how that is prepared for you. So you know that this cafe and these baristas have prepared something in the best possible way they can, which, not to kind of say that this is necessarily a bad thing about a lot of other cafes, but there's maybe certain things that kind of prohibit you from being able to do that, whether that's like the equipment that you have available to you, maybe you've gone through staff changes and just haven't been able to get them all up to speed at one point, or lots of different factors. But there is opportunities for baristas, particularly in cities like Edinburgh, Glasgow, London, to do kind of like freelance stuff. So you can work, essentially you set yourself a rate the same way that a freelance artist or something would, and you can just contact cafes if they need an extra pair of hands for the day. You go over and like work the bar for them. There's like online platforms, one called Baristas on Tap, which is essentially a kind of app which helps baristas organise this kind of thing. So baristas set themselves up with accounts and availability. They put their CV on it, what kind of equipment they've used before, whether they've participated in competitions, stuff like that. And then if a cafe is like needs someone last minute, they can go on that app and just see who's available to work that day. There's also a good example of someone who does freelance very well is Adam in Glasgow. So he's Adam's Coffee Glasgow on Instagram. He does a lot of like freelance barista shifts, but he also does like home training and professional training for people who either work in coffee and want to increase their skills and use training and things that are available to them beyond the place that they work, or if you're a home barista who just wants to understand things a little bit more and not just follow what James Hoffman or someone on the internet is saying, then you can actually do like a class with him and he talks you through it from the perspective of someone who's worked in coffee for like a number of years. But yeah, there's definitely, I think in bigger cities there is more of an opportunity for baristas to kind of work in this way. I think that it empowers baristas in a way, and it's good. It's nice to see in Dundee now that there's there's 2 H9s, there's the 2 other shops, and then I think there's a 5th one just about to open.
Oh really?
And then the East as well, they do specialty coffee. So yeah, it's good to see that there's a big economy of it growing in Dundee, because hopefully that's the kind of thing that will kind of start up there.
Yeah, I like, similar to you, the reason I got into coffee is, for a little while it was like the only thing that I was able to like treat or reward myself with in the day. Like it was like this thing that was going to be a process. It was a way to be mindful. It was a way to like almost meditate when making something. But I was always just like, I had a friend who was AeroPressed daft. Like he was all about it. Mike Goods, I need to get him on here sometime as well. And he used to like, you need to come to my house, you need to try an AeroPress, and I was like, fuck, that's pretentious. I was like, get over yourself, like you don't need to be weighing out your coffee, just scoop it in. And then
get it done.
I kind of got into it. He actually bought me one.
Okay, nice.
And he was like, right, get used to using it. So started using it, started to really get into it, because sometimes a cup would taste unbelievable, and other times it would just taste alright. And then sometimes beans would taste different, like obviously with like temperature of water, and we can talk about this as well. Like they say when you buy a coffee machine, you're not buying a coffee machine, you're buying a chemistry set. Like we can go a bit into that. And I just slowly started to love the process. And like what I thought was really cool is I was mega into this. Like, if this is going to take time, and I've never been down to Lowdown, so I'm going to have to come down, because the whole thing with my coffee in the morning is like, and this is maybe sounds, I make the best coffee in my town, I think. And that's not discrediting anybody. I just make such a good coffee, and my morning coffee is like exactly how I would want it. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm getting consistent, and I wouldn't make it for anybody else, because I'm like, it's just my taste thing. It's just mine.
Yeah, I know you.
And what I found is like the scene of people that feel the same way about coffee was unbelievable. Because I can remember as well, when I first started doing this with the AeroPress, when people told me they drank instant coffee, I almost see myself as a bit like, oh, you drink that shite, do you? Like,
yeah.
And it actually, like, talking to James Hoffman, one of my favourite videos that he ever released was one when he was like, how do you deal with drinking bad coffee? Like, if say you go to a friend's house and they just make you an instant coffee, like, you don't want to be that person that's like, oh no, that's not good enough for me, I don't drink that. He was like, just drink it for what it is. Like, appreciate that time. Like, and honestly, like, since then, I just like completely like wound my neck in, and I was like, you need to get a grip, Thomas. You're not a connoisseur at this. You've spent a bit of time and a bit of money on books and stuff to understand it, but you're not that good. Like, settle yourself down and just enjoy coffee for what it is. And what I guess I just want to quickly touch on, like, so you went from V60. So for anybody listening, V60 is like a funnel that you put a paper filter in, and that kettle that Lewis was talking about earlier on, you need to look at them. They look like a magic lamp or something. Like, they've got this like real skinny spout, but it's so you can control. It's the speed that the water comes out, isn't it? You can.
Yeah, it's like the flow rate of the water, and like it comes out in a very, very steady stream, rather than like in a kind of normal kettle. It all just comes out
like a waterfall. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, Lewis, it went AeroPress. Then I discovered mocha pots when I was at uni. That's what they're called, aren't they? The Italian on stove.
Yeah.
So those silver ones that people have potentially seen in films. Then it went to V60. And then my same friend, Mike Goods, as a wedding gift, he bought me a Sage Barista Express. So I love mine. I love it, but I've always wanted the I can't remember what it's called, how you say it, you guys had one in it. Yeah. I wanted the single one of them. I wanted a black one of them. Maybe one day. But they're like $7,500 or something, aren't they?
I know.
Maybe one day. If the podcast takes off, I'll do it, but what was your journey like? Because I can only imagine how much you have in your house. How many tools and devices and contraptions.
Well, I actually when I moved to Edinburgh, I did a bit of a purge of all my like coffee stuff.
Okay.
I got rid of so much of it because there was so much that I just wasn't using. But so yeah, I started off with a little V60, and then I think shortly after that I got an AeroPress. And then the AeroPress is great, I think, because there's so much opportunity to just like piss around with it. Like there's a really good, I don't know if you've seen it, there's a website called aeroprecipe.com.
I have not.
It's essentially an AeroPress recipe database. And AeroPress is another, like, there's national competitions that are centered around this brewer. So you get like the English AeroPress Championships. There used to be one in Scotland, but I don't think it's run kind of since I got into coffee, at least. Yeah, you get them all different. The Irish one is actually happening this week. And yeah, you go on this website and people will put up their kind of competition recipes and tell you these are the kind of coffees to use with it. This is the makeup, the mineral content of your water, and like fancy stuff like that. But yeah, so I did that. I got a Chemex. I don't know if you've ever seen them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get the Chemex because I was really interested in what kind of coffee it would make. It was more just because it was like fucking gorgeous.
So
Like,
anybody that's listening, a Chemex looks like a egg timer.
mhm.
You know, like the old-fashioned like glass egg timers with the sand. Yeah. I always loved that. Do you know how a lot of them have got that like leather bit of like lace with a bead on it,
Yeah,
and that like wood in the
yeah,
middle?
like
I don't know what it. Yeah.
it's so nice. But I used at the end. I did not like the coffee that it made. By the end, I didn't like using it. You had to use a stupid because it's so big. You had to use so much coffee in order to actually like make something. So it was just wasteful for me. So I ended up just using it as a vase. Like I just put flowers in it. And then it was like this is how it. I was like it wasn't designed to make coffee. It was designed to have flowers put in it. It was so much nicer for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so I did those. I kind of experimented with steep and release brewers. So there's a thing called a clever dripper. So it's kind of like it's like a percolator kind of thing, like a V60, but it has like a valve on the bottom, which doesn't release the liquid in the in the cone, let's call it, until like it sits on top of a cup or a carafe. It kind of like you can sit it on there like you would with an AeroPress, and the water just sits in. The coffee just sits in with the water, and then you put it on top of something, and then it releases all of the coffee through the paper filter. I found them to be very, very consistent and really nice, but just they lacked a little bit of like artistry to me, and because I'm a little bit pretentious, I like to know that I was having to put a bit of effort into what I was making. And then I started working with an Oria, which is a percolator like a V60, except it is flat bottomed. So I'll actually just grab mine and show you 'cause it's easier.
People didn't expect this. I didn't expect this today.
Show and tell. Right, sorry, it's covered in coffee. So a V60 is like kind of 60-degree kind of cone. You put a little like cone filter in it. Orias are like flat bottom brewers, so you put like a. So yeah, you can see from the shape of it, the filter paper sits on the bottom, like in there, and then wraps around the side.
Yeah.
And then so the idea is that you've got a more even base of coffee at the bottom, rather than it all kind of funneling through one single point. It kind of all falls through one kind of bed at the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the idea is that it gives you a bit more like consistency, and there's less can go wrong kind of thing, is what a lot of people tend to say. I'm not entirely sure about the science of it. I've not looked into it enough, but most people will kind of agree that flat bottom brewers tend to be a bit more consistent and allow you a little bit more room for error. But yes, and then I kind of got the first version of the Oreo and kind of fell in love with it, and that company kind of started just as I was getting into coffee as well. So I've kind of followed that brand kind of through all their product development, and then I've ended up with that one, which is their most recent version. And I just use that all the time. Like that's kind of why I got rid of all my other stuff, because this one, you can take this thing on the bottom off, and you get different versions of these which help you do different things. So you get one which allows you to use different filter papers, so you can put like a V60 paper in it and use it like that. Or so this one is called the fast bottom. So I think the idea is that these little grooves break surface tension within the filter paper, which allows water to travel through it quicker. Which means that you can grind finer and have like more potential for like flavor extraction. So, and since I started using this, came out like 6 months ago, that's what I use for literally everything. I've actually got it tattooed on my arm.
So he means that he loves coffee. You folk with your instinct. So, something that always blew me away is like if you're someone out there that is thinking like, oh, I do really like a cup of coffee. Like I do enjoy a cafe cup of coffee. I'd recommend going to these places, but like don't expect it to taste like you're your home coffee. Have you got any either funny or a bit embarrassing stories or anything, like someone comes up and they're like, ooh, what have you done to this? Because some of the coffees that you guys have brewed or roasted and whatnot, they have like me and you speak this you speak this about this a lot. Like anything that was real weird, you would tell me. You would say, Tom, this is real. Tastes like umbongo, or it tastes like, and I would be like, oh, well, I need to try it. There's some that taste fruity. There's some that taste caramelly. There's do you have any stories like that you can talk about, people tasting these and then not being sure? Or...
So we get, in the cafe I work at now, because we tend to use, when I was at EH9, our house coffee was a bit more of a kind of classic kind of flavour profile. It was definitely fruity. It was an interesting coffee. It tasted very, very nice. But it was one of those ones where if you weren't into specialty coffee, you could like it.
Yeah.
It had nice chocolatey notes, caramel, a bit of kind of strawberry in there. It was very, very pleasant. At my work at the moment, we are the complete opposite of that, where the coffees we use have all gone through ridiculous amount of stages of fermentation. We've got the one we had on yesterday. So it's produced by a guy in Colombia called Wilton Benitez, who does a lot of competition coffees. So he produces these coffees specifically for barista and brewers competitions. He tends to have this process that's called advanced process, or advanced washed, advanced natural. So this coffee is advanced washed, and it's a Caturra varietal. And I think it's my favourite espresso I've ever had. It's unbelievably tropical, with loads of florals. It's passion fruit, guava, a little bit of violet in there as well. It's so interesting, and it works with milk. It's sometimes with these coffees, black, they're really, really nice. As soon as you pair them with milk, they either lose all their flavour and complexity, or the whole thing just tastes not good. It's just not that sort of coffee. But this one works well in anything. And yesterday we had an Italian family come in, and obviously Italy as a country has a very deep-rooted coffee culture. They're used to, Italian people wouldn't like me saying this, but they're used to very low quality raw coffee that is burnt, essentially. It's roasted to the point where it gets black, because the product of the green coffee is, green coffee is coffee before it's been roasted. It's so low that you have to cook it, essentially, so much that you lose all the natural flavours, because the natural flavours aren't good. So all you're tasting is the kind of roastiness of it. Yeah. And that makes your kind of big, punchy, thick, bitter espresso that Italians like. And fair enough, I used to drink stuff like that. And then they add 3 or 4 sugars to it. And a group of Italians came into my work, and they're all, I go to serve them, chatting to them about the coffee. They're like, what coffee is it you're using? I mentioned that it's light roast and all that, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, we'll have 3 espressos. So I bring over 3 espressos, and one of them tries it, and you can just see them go they're not used to coffee having acidity or natural sweetness. So they're just all of a sudden they were expecting something thick, bitter, and they asked for sugar and had quite a lot of sugar in it. But to be fair to them, they finished it.
Yeah.
We ran quite a long shot on that espresso. It's 40 ml or something, and they all finished it. But yeah, to be honest, I've not had that many bad experiences with it. I think I've been quite lucky in the people that I've kind of served in EH9 and Lowdown. Most people are quite curious, and even if they maybe don't particularly like it, they can understand why someone else would, or they're just like interested to try something new. But yeah, there were definitely times where I've had someone said to me once that a filter coffee tasted like manure. I was a bit like, oh, like, really? They're like, yeah, just tastes like manure. It's like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I think it tastes great, but
Yeah. So I'd made so many at home. Like I'd done all this process. Like I was like mega into coffee, and I'll never forget. First time I went to Good Coffee Cartel. They had this.
yeah.
They had an Ethiopian bean, and I to this day I have no clue what it was. I didn't know enough about it. I didn't know that there was like. I thought it was just like there was Colombian coffee. Like there wasn't like regions. There wasn't different altitude. There wasn't all that stuff. I just thought there was just places and everybody done the same thing. And I remember having an espresso of this, and I remember just being like, this is just completely blown my mind that there is huge spectrum of flavours that you can taste and try. And like after it, the way I would have described it is it's almost like whiskey.
Yeah.
Like some people like it, some people don't. And then there's people that do just want to put Coke in it.
Yeah.
And it's like that.
It's like milk or something.
Yeah, yeah. Is there like a coffee that you remember, or is there like a time that you just remember being like, this is my thing. Like this is definitely it.
I remember getting a Kenyan coffee. This was when I was quite new to coffee. I got a Kenyan coffee at home. It was from Craft House Coffee Roasters, who are somewhere in England. I don't want to say where because I'll probably get it wrong. But Craft House, we had Craft House in at EH9 a few times, but nice people there. But yeah, I tried a Kenyan coffee from them, and I think this was the first coffee I had that wasn't from Braithwaite's. And Braithwaite's is like not really specialty coffee. Like I don't know the quality of the raw coffee they buy, but it's roasted very, very dark. I think I'd only ever had Brazilian coffees from them, so I was used to very bitter, very nutty, dark chocolatey kind of coffees. And I had this washed Kenyan, which was just like pure raspberry juice. I remember just thinking like, fuck, similar to what you just said. I did not realise that coffee could taste like this. Like I've had wines and whiskies and stuff before where I've like tried them on. Oh, you can taste a little bit of this or a little bit of that. But this experience with this coffee was just like, that is all I can taste is raspberry. There's no coffee flavour. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, that is just raspberry.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was one of those like, okay, cool. I'm into this.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess that is the thing. Like, it's like whiskey's not for everybody. Wine's not for everybody. It's like this flavour, like this flavoursome idea. It's not for everyone. But like alcohol, a lot of people like the caffeine. They just like that hit. They like that drug that's almost in it. And I don't want to go into that, like, talking about like that conspiracy of like caffeine's the most, I don't know, addictive, but like allowed. Because I think alcohol's, like, most people, not very many people die a year or become actually dependent, or maybe they do become dependent on coffee, but it doesn't impact life as much as alcohol. So I don't want to. That's another topic for another day, I think.
Yeah.
But talking about like tasting and tastes. Do you know anything about super tasters? Is that what they're called?
No, I'm not sure.
So I can't remember what it is. I remember speaking to someone about this not that long ago. I can't remember if they're called super tasters or they've got this like extra thing on their taste buds, and they have this ability.
I think maybe we've spoken about this.
Yeah.
EH9. Yeah, it's like there's a certain percentage of people who have like extra taste buds or like more developed taste buds or something.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah.
It is something like that, and it's like more females than males. Like there's a much higher percentage of them are females than males.
Right.
But look, like this last thing, just before we move on to talking a bit more about like working in hospitality, and like I've got a bit of experience in that as well, and we've definitely like touched on it just speaking to each other a few times, but I'd love to delve into a bit more. But could you explain because this is really going to like round up what we just spoke about, could you kind of explain cupping? Could you explain, because maybe some people have heard of it, maybe they've not, but like just explain that sort of way, because I've tried it and I honestly I didn't have a clue what to do and I had to ask. And this was actually at the Glasgow Coffee Festival. I had to say, like, I had to say to the lady, I was like, excuse me, I really don't know what to do. I love coffee, but I've never done this. Can you talk me through it? And she told me,
Yeah.
and like I was pretty much just like getting the spoon and going like eating it like cereal or something.
Yeah.
And then there was the people behind me, and like for some people they'll be like, oh, that is so pretentious, but like it's not pretentious. It's just not your thing. And it's like people that drink whiskey and they swirl it in the glass and they're like, oh, look at the legs, and the same as wine. But like, could you maybe explain a little bit about cupping and its thing in coffee?
So cupping is essentially the name for a method of tasting coffee. So the idea behind it's called cupping because you brew coffee in little bowls that are all cups. So we call them cupping bowls. So what you do is you line up. Let's say you've got 4 different coffees. You line up your 4 coffees. You set your ratio. So whenever I do coffee cuppings, I tend to do around like 11 or 12 grams to 200 milliliters of water, all on the same grind setting. Grind them, put them in the cup. You add the water. You leave it for like 4 to 5 minutes. There'll be a crust that forms on the top of the cup, which is like all just the coffee grounds and stuff. You kind of like break that with a spoon, like just kind of give it a little stir. They all start to fall to the bottom. You use a couple spoons to like just skim off the rest of the like dry coffee that sits at the top. All the coffee that falls to the bottom, because it's right at the bottom there and it's not really interacting with the water, the coffee's no longer brewing, it's just like kind of sitting there with all the brewed coffee on top. And then, like you say, you just take a spoon off a little bit from the top of the cup and like slurp it. And the reason why people do that kind of like that kind of thing, that is what makes people think it's so pretentious, is you're trying to like essentially spray your mouth with coffee. So there's different taste buds, or different parts of your mouth recognize different flavors and different tastes. So you want to get them all covered in coffee so that you're getting all of them, essentially. It's like there's a trick where, is it acidity? I think because you get a lot of sweetness through aromas. So if you like, when people taste coffees, if they want to measure acidity, they'll like put a peg on their nose so that they're not smelling it at the same time, and then you're more likely to pick up the acidity over the sweetness. But yeah, so that's essentially what you do, and you go around. Different people do cuppings in different ways, but I like to keep it very, very simple whenever I do them, and kind of like you say, like a lot of people will say it's like very, very pretentious, or feel a little bit embarrassed taking up this dainty little spoon and making a noise. Whenever I run cuppings, I always do this little thing just before we start, where I say, right, well, you're going to make this noise, and I do it in front of everyone, and I just go, everyone's going to sound really stupid, just get over it.
Yeah.
Because we're all going to be doing it. So just get over it, and let's just like try these coffees and have some fun. And if you don't want to do it, then if you don't want to make the noise and you just want to like put it in your mouth, then cool. I'm not going to be an arsehole who goes like, no, you must do it in the way that we like. Just like at the end of the day, the whole thing, cuppings and tastings, like certainly outside of a professional environment, because obviously like we do them in cafes, roasteries do them as like QCing their coffee. It's the reason why they would do a cupping rather than brew it is, in a cupping there's way less going on, there's less variables that could go wrong, that could make it taste shit. Like you're kind of tasting it and it's kind of like rawest form almost. I've lost my train of thought, but yeah, so that's essentially what you do, and then you kind of keep going until the coffees are cold, because the coffee's flavour will develop as the temperature goes down as well. So you might try it when it's hot after like 10 minutes, and you think, oh, it doesn't taste that great, tastes a bit dull, a bit like watery, nothingy. There's not really much going on. That kind of just tastes a little bit like coffee. And then you go around the table. You come back a few minutes later, try it again. You're like, oh wow, that tastes like blueberries.
Yeah.
Because it's just after it's cooled down, it's had more time for those flavors to kind of come out. And then it gets really, really cold, and you try it and you go, that just tastes not very nice. Because now there's just it's so cold that there's just too much flavor going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's cuppings. I think they're a very, very good way for people to get into coffee and experience, if they maybe don't have much experience of specialty coffee and the flavors that kind of come with specialty coffee. I think a cupping is a great way to kind of expose yourself to that, because you'll try all these different coffees. Whoever's running it probably knows what they're talking about, so we'll be able to, like, if you have any questions, you'll be able to ask them, like, so why does this coffee taste different to this coffee?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And you can learn about origin, process, varietal, all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what? I was still, even now, I still do sometimes think, like, I'm into it. I really am into it. But I think there is, like, a level. Like you're saying there, you, like, try and make everybody feel comfortable, welcome. Like, it's just about the coffee. Let's enjoy it. I think there is, like, a stage. And I asked a few people at the Glasgow Coffee Fest, like, is there a point when people ask questions that you're like, this is now, that you're starting to get a bit pretentious? Like, you probably already know if you're going to like this or not. Like, those little details that you're worrying about, you're just almost showing off your own knowledge. But I enjoyed cupping, and I didn't ever think it would be something that I would like. Because I just thought, like, I just enjoy a cup of coffee. But I want it to taste good, and I want it to have, like, varieties of flavours when I, like, make different, if I buy different beans. And does that make sense? Like, I like it to be, I like variety in my coffees. I don't really like this, I'm not hung up on the same thing. And honestly, for someone that is listening, that maybe is just exposed to instant coffee, like, I don't think Lewis really cares. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I just prefer. Do they just call it bean to cup or specialty? Is that like specialty coffee? Is that just what it gets called?
So specialty coffee is like it's kind of the name of the industry almost, and it's kind of like, so a coffee bean is regarded as specialty coffee. So you get these things called, kind of going back to cupping, you get these things called cupping scores.
Right, okay.
So raw coffee gets grown, produced, all that stuff, and then Q graders, which are essentially they're essentially the gatekeepers of who decides, like, okay, this coffee can be sold in the specialty market. They taste it and they give it a score. Anything above, I think it's 82 points, that's considered specialty coffee.
Okay.
So, and anything below that is likely to be sold to the commodity market. So your Starbucks, Costa, supermarket brands, instant coffees, stuff like that.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess coffee. We spoke for nearly 50 minutes now about coffee, and if someone didn't tune in for that, mate, I don't want to keep you too long, but there was a big topic that we both really did want to touch on. You're quite, I don't know what the word would be now. On social media, you are very pro speak up about your mental health. You are very, like, there's people out there that are struggling. Talk to them, get in touch with them, and you'll share stuff on your stories all the time. And when, like, I'll give you a little bit of my, like, I worked in hospitality. I worked in, like, bars, restaurants. It wasn't a hotel when I originally worked in, but it is now. Cafes. I worked in a few of them. And when I first started working in a bar, it was like the coolest thing in the world for me, because I loved boozing. And then what was happening is I was pretty much just in the pub and partying constantly, round the clock. But then I was half into, like, and I was hungover most of the time, or I was still, like, hammered from just leaving the party and coming straight to work. And I had to put on this, like, persona of, like, I'm fine, I'm happy, because that was part of the service. And during that time, I was actually diagnosed with depression. Like, I'd stopped exercising. I wasn't able to. I would sleep all day, go to my shift, probably stay up all night partying or drinking, and then I'd go back. And I was like, I just knew I wasn't happy, but I also knew that it was hard to, like, have this, like, how are you? Are you having the best time? I feel like shit on the inside. And, like, I honestly, I've never pried. I have messaged you a few times just being like, how are you getting on? You all right? Just because of something that I've seen, and like I don't know what the backstory is behind why you share those things, and I don't know if you want to go into a bit of detail on like yourself or what's happening in your industry and what's happening in hospitality that makes you talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I guess the reason I kind of like to kind of speak up about it and kind of encourage others to speak up about it is because, I mean, I've gone through like various kind of mental health issues and like periods of my life where I've had worse. I've been in like a worse mental health state, let's say. And I think it's important for people to just be aware that it's a thing. Because I think in like generations gone by, it's kind of like, I mean, there's an element of like toxic masculinity and things where it's like, you know, you just keep going and it'll all be fine. But unfortunately, that's not kind of the way that the human brain kind of works. Like, you kind of need to, if you have some sort of issue, you kind of need to address it. Otherwise, it's scientifically proven that mental health issues like anxiety and depression don't get better with time; they get worse if untreated. And it's just encouraging people, because I think there's a lot of people, particularly men, who are scared to kind of like to open up to people. And I think if you just like take away the taboo around it and the stigma and just kind of like go like, yeah, lots of people feel like shit a lot of the time, and it should be okay for us to just accept that. You know, like I think we're past the time where someone would say, oh, I feel like shit, and people go like, oh, he's always just fucking going on about how he feels like shit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I've definitely experienced people like that before, and it's like, no, like if someone is going through something, they should be able to talk about it with the people around them. But when I started working in hospitality, I kind of on Instagram found out about all these different organisations that kind of raise awareness and kind of offer support for hospitality workers with mental health issues, or like, so there's an organisation called the Burnt Chef Project, which I share on my stories quite a lot of the time. You've probably seen me share like quotes and statistics that they put up. And some of the stuff they talk, I can't remember the exact numbers, but they basically, if you look into it, you find that yes, we have these like very stark statistics within the UK about like, you know, 1 in every 5 people will experience some sort of mental health issue in their life. That figure goes up drastically when you isolate hospitality industry. It's like, if it's a really bad problem in the public in general, in the general population, in hospitality, it's an epidemic. Like, it's very, very bad. And this organisation, they offer awareness and support for people who work within the industry, whether they might be going through things themselves and they want to learn more about the things that they're going through so they can better understand it and just know that there is something. There are people kind of like fighting the good fight, essentially. Or you can go on and do little like training modules, which I'm kind of like in the midst of doing at the moment, which is all about kind of learning how to deal with or recognise people who are going through hard times within work and what the kind of correct way of handling it is, and like a safe way of handling it. And just ways to kind of give people a bit of, make people feel safe about potentially talking up about it, because there's a lot of people, I've gone through it in the past, where you just mask and put a brave face on because you're like, I just don't want to bother anyone.
Yeah.
And I think if you can create this culture that it's okay to talk about these things, then people are more likely to just open up about it. And then if they're opening up about things before they get really bad, that's the best time for them to open up about it. Do you know what I mean? Because then, I think, sometimes in my own experience, you can have this little thing that's going on, but if you don't address it and try and do something about it, then it just gets worse. And then you might end up at a point where you spiral, or you could have a panic attack or something. Do you know what I mean? And it could have been something that if you had addressed it 3 weeks prior, you might not have. It might have just been this, that you had a quick conversation with someone, and then you're like, oh yeah, the fact that I've just been able to get that off my shoulders feels good. But then it can become this like quite big issue that affects you in quite a drastic way. But yeah, I just think it's very, very important. I don't like the idea of people feeling unsafe or like they can't talk about these things. So I kind of make it take it on as a bit of a responsibility to make people know that there's, if anyone wants to, if any of my friends or anyone who I work with needs someone to speak to about something in confidence, like I'm happy to chat to them.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I've said this as soon as I worked in hospitality. I said that it should be like national service. Like, I think everyone should have to do like a year in it, because you'll have experienced people being rude, like unnecessarily. Like,
oh yeah.
Hey, where's my, like, you experience that. And I think once, like, I guarantee you'll be the same as me. When I go somewhere for food, if say something goes wrong, I'm like, look, these things happen. Like, I've done it for so long that, like, sometimes your order will get lost. Like, sometimes someone will, like, forget that you're there. Sometimes someone will just, like, it will slip their mind that they've not got you your drinks. And, like, when you see someone kicking off, or if I'm out with someone and they kick off, like, I get that person's there to pay for an experience. But that person that's serving you is still a person. That they're still a human being. And, like, everyone cocks up. Everybody cocks up. I genuinely, I think it should be like national service. I think everybody should have to do that. Like, it should be, you have to work in the public sector. You have to serve people. You have to, like, wait on people. Like, you have to do that so that when you yourself go out, you're not a prick. Like, you're not doing things and saying things.
I think that's because you can always tell when you serve someone if they haven't worked in hospitality before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've only worked in it for like 3 or 4 years, and like even now I'm like, you have conversations with some people, and just the way that they speak to you, you're like, yeah, you've never had this interaction the other way around.
No, never.
Yeah, it's just like. On you go.
No, you go, Lewis.
I think from some people you can sense the lack of respect, and that maybe sounds a little bit like drastic, but it's definitely something I've experienced more in Edinburgh in the last few months than I ever did in Dundee. And maybe that's because of where we were in Dundee, but you just have conversations with some people, or you serve them, and you just think, they actually just don't see me as like equal to them at all.
Yeah,
it's like I am there to only to facilitate their enjoyment of this service that they are paying for.
Yeah,
and if I make a little mistake, it's the end of the fucking world.
Yeah,
like how I see it. And then you get the people who do work in hospital. I remember I used to go in, if I ever go into a cafe and they're really busy, and like, because I know a lot of people who work in cafes in Scotland, so if I go in a lot of cafes I'll go into, and I know one of the baristas that will be working, and they might be really, really busy, and they'll be like really apologetic, like it might take a little while, like I'm really, really sorry, and I'm just like, leave me till last, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, dude, see, like, it's fine. Like, I'm here just because I want to be here. So, like, if I have to wait half an hour, I'll wait half an hour. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always say that when people are kind of, like, say stuff like, when people are quite nice to us, like, particularly, like, working on George Street during the Fringe, you can imagine how fucking hectic it got over lunchtime and stuff. And sometimes people were waiting 35 minutes. And I would always just, if someone who worked in hospitality or someone who just came in and was like very nice, I would always just give it to them and go, thank you for being sound. Like, cheers for not being a dick.
Yeah.
Because a lot of other people are just being dicks.
Yeah. And it's odd that it's like almost socially accepted, you know? Like, if it happens, there's not very many people that will stick up for you. Mm-hmm. Like, there's been times we've been places and Lisa's had to say, like, don't say anything. And I normally I'll just sit, like, and I'm not anybody that's going to do anything, do you know what I mean? I just feel bad. What ends up happening is, I won't say anything to the rude person, but the person that was serving, I'll end up saying, like, look, I get it, you're doing a good job, like, things go wrong, like, don't worry. And it's not like I think I'm anything special or that, I'm just trying to, like, be as, like, connected to another human as possible. But
yeah, and it's like a bit of solidarity, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just recognising the fact that, like, yeah, that person was a bit of an arsehole to you there.
Yeah.
But, like, we're not going to be arseholes to you. It's nothing to do with you. Do you know what I mean?
100%. And this is something that, like, I've spoke to quite a few of my friends that have worked in hospitality, and when I worked in it as well, that, like, one of the hardest things I think is you have to always be on. It's not like, like if you go out for a coffee in Edinburgh, and you go to a coffee shop, someone will probably know that you work at Lowdown. There's then pressure on you to, like, represent that place. So you have to be like, and you might just want to sit and do nothing. You maybe want to have a quiet coffee, read your book. Someone comes in and they're like, oh, Lewis, you're from Lowdown. How are you getting on? Oh, I'm away to have this coffee and I'm away to have this bean. What coffee have you got? What are you away to drink? What are you doing today? And they almost, because you've been that friendly way at work, it's expected for you to be that all the time. And like, I don't know if you've ever experienced yourself, like, you bump into someone and you feel like you recognise their face. They say hi, they kind of chat, and you almost feel like I have to get along with this person for a little bit, in case they've been before, in case they've just maybe seen where I work. Like, I can't be like, yeah, nice meeting you, I'm really busy, I'm away to go do something. Like, you can't do that.
I know. It's actually very, very strange. Like, I used to have it in Dundee, like that exact scenario I used to have in Dundee all the time, because obviously Dundee's like, it's a lot smaller. You see a lot of the same people, especially like on Perth Road. It tends to be the same kind of, like, it's all one big community. So I used to have that on my days off, or like walking back from work, like, and everyone on that road you walk past goes into EH9.
Yeah.
I could have had, like, not even like a particularly bad day, but, you know, I've been working since 7 a.m. I'm like, headphones on, I'm like, I've been chatting to people all day. I do not want interaction right now. I want, like, a bit of decompression, quiet time, and then you run into 10 people on your way to get the bus who all want to have the exact same kind of level of service. And because they don't see it, to me, in that position, it's, I'm providing a service, but to them, they're just chatting to Lewis behind the bar.
Yeah.
So, like you say, that's how I am to them. So yeah, there is an element of, like, I used to struggle with it, particularly in the beginning, where it just felt very fake to me.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm just like, I just don't want to chat to anyone. Like, I might have been having a bad day, or like I was just tired. So I was like, I don't want to, like, have this whole big, like, it's easier when you work at a kind of community focused place, because you get to know people, and then it's like, it is just kind of like having an interaction with your pals. It becomes less taxing kind of over time, I think. But yeah, it's a very, very strange position to be in, because, like you say, people kind of build up this expectation of who you are and the way you're going to act with them.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, you're at work.
Yeah.
You're doing that is your job, is to act that way. And yeah, it can be very, very taxing. And
it's a difficult position to be in, because the person there, you like, and you understand, is like the server, the waiter, the barista, like, that person is out on potentially their day off. It's their hard-earned cash. Like, you do want it to be, and especially if you're passionate about what you do. Like, anybody that comes in my gym, I want them. I really do. And I know I don't get it right all the time. I know I don't, because sometimes I'm stressed. Sometimes I'm not. I'm like, I'm really busy away to do something else, or someone else has my attention and I'm talking to them. That, like, you do, like, I do realize, and you'll be the same. Like, you do realize and you do remember that, like they're here either spending their money, they're here to chill out, they're here to relax, they're here to enjoy a good coffee, a workout, whatever it ends up being. But like, it is hard to like keep it on, and it is hard to like try and get the other person. Something I used to say, and I don't know if I would have I don't know if I'd actually have the balls to say it now. If say someone ordered a drink without saying please, I got this from my manager at the time. I'd say like, sorry, was I rude to you?
Yeah.
And I don't think I'd have the balls to say that now. And they'd be like, no, why? And I'd be like,
never thought about that. I'm going to try that next time.
Like, honestly, my manager, he now owns that place. I've actually done a podcast with him. I'm going to try and get him on again because he's great. He was unbelievable at it. But I guarantee, like, if I was to get him on and actually talk to him about this would be so hard for him because there's so many people that just see him as work G.
Yeah.
And it'll be like you're saying, like, there's work Lewis, because we've all got a million hats that we wear. There's son, partner, brother, sister, like husband, there's all those things, friend. And then there's like the work version of you. And people sometimes expect that of you. And like, I've actually had this, and I had this recently. That I was with my wife, we were like doing something. I think we'd had just like, not like an argument, but like a little bicker. And then someone wanted to try and like quiz me about something. Like, oh Tom, I'm thinking about doing this in the gym. And I was like, yeah, look, best thing to do is just message me. And I could tell that person was like, wait a minute, I want to ask you a question. Like, you're supposed to be working, you're supposed to answer my questions. And I can remember being like, when I walked away, like, fuck, that is now like what it is. Like, I have to be on. And I think in hospitality, it is a difficult thing. It's such a difficult thing. And I do think that people, if anybody is listening, like you said, Lewis, like, it can wear you down. So like, don't worry. Like, you're not shite at your job because you don't want to be nice all the time. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person either if you don't want to be nice all the time. Like, I can remember that sometimes I have these little like crisis things in my head that I'm like, maybe I'm not as nice as I think, and maybe it is all an act. And then I'm like, it's not. It's just I don't want to work all the time.
Yeah. And it's like, I think these sorts, it can kind of lead to like a bit of like self-doubt, like at times, which is then a bit of a slippery slope to kind of go down. But it is I think as well what people forget is that I kind of make a joke when I'm at work where like if someone like, I don't know, like messes up a coffee or like spills something, I just turn around and they're like, fuck's sake, I just turn around and go, mate, it's just coffee, the stakes are not that high.
Yeah.
We'll just remake it, it's alright, don't worry, everything's fine. But like that's kind of like me like taking the piss a little bit, but it is a very, like any kind of hospitality, particularly I think kitchens maybe more so than like making coffees on a bar. They're so like hectic, high pressure, high paced environments that like you can be in this like constant state of fight or flight when you're at work, and like you might be doing a 12-hour shift. So to spend 12 hours of your day in this like constant state of stress, it's like so debilitating. But then people who stick with hospitality for a long time, they do it because they enjoy it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, there's definitely cases where people, it might be like they feel like it's the only thing they can do because it's the only thing they've ever done, so they stay with it. But there's so many people who just like absolutely love it, but then also despise it at the same time.
Yeah.
Because it can make you feel really shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's very, very important for people within the industry to just kind of like be open about their own experiences and kind of just be there for like each other. I'm lucky that the two cafes I've worked at have always been like very, very, I mean, I've only been at Lowdown for like just over 2 months, and like we've got a very, like everyone kind of helps each other. We all go out, like every now and then we'll go out for a drink after work and like have a chat about things, and everyone's been very nice to me on like, how are you finding things? Is there anything that you're struggling with? Like, can I help you in any way?
Yeah.
and at EH9 it was the same. Like Fraser was like very, very supportive for everyone to kind of like if they needed a bit of time off or there was something that was bothering them at work that was affecting them, he was never kind of going to be like, I don't want to hear about it. He was always like, tell me so we can like accommodate you and try and make it a bit better for everyone. Yeah, because these things can, like these are the sorts of things where if one person is really struggling with something at work, if it's because of something that could be maybe done differently at work, then addressing it is just better for everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's kind of why I'm like trying to put myself through all this training, because I want to. Essentially, well, there's even bits where I've been reading up like, on these presentations and stuff, and it's gone like, oh, don't do this because this is like, and I go, oh, I do that. Okay, cool. I hadn't thought about that in that way, so now I'll change it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's, and I guess like I do want to say as well that like anybody that is listening, like I'm pretty sure that Lewis doesn't actually mind you stopping and speaking to him. I don't mind if you stop and speak to me, but there is then like that is a part of what we do, like, and it is a difficult part, and it's not like we hate you. It's not like we don't want you to stop and speak. Like we actually love it. Like on a good day, or if you're having a bad day and someone bumps into you and they're happy as in, and sometimes it can be like, oh, that person, I made that person happy for that minute, like, or whatever, like however that works. But like, it doesn't mean don't speak. It's just that it's just it's a difficult thing to be able to do. And the only way that I can kind of like relate it to something is it's like, imagine you have your favourite thing in the world, but you're only allowed to do it at work. Like you have your favourite hobby, you have your favourite thing you like to talk about, but you're only allowed to do it at work. Like a lot of people would be like, what are you on about? And the way that I would explain it is like, imagine it's like you love watching football. Imagine the only time you were allowed to watch football was in your workplace. Like you would have to do your shift, and then if there was football on, you would have to stay there for it. Like, mine's is the gym. I absolutely love going to the gym. But when I'm in the gym, most people want to talk to me about the gym. They want to talk to me about coaching. They want to talk to me about my gym. And, like, it's why I used to train in another gym. But now that I train in my own gym, I was in my own gym this morning for 3.5 hours and I'd done 4 exercises. I didn't even get halfway through my workout. But, like, today's, I'm not that bothered. It was just a busy morning. But, like, I had to sacrifice what I wanted to do to make sure that everybody else could do what they wanted to do to the best that the gym could possibly let them. And like honestly, that again sounds like I'm moaning, but it's just like a sacrifice or part and parcel of what we do. And I think it's just working in the public, isn't it? Like,
it's just the reality of it.
And it's not a bad thing. So if you're listening, you're like, oh God, I probably shouldn't speak to these two ever again. Like, the reason we're probably in the positions that we're in and the jobs that we're in and why we're like able to hold a conversation for an hour effortlessly is because of the people we are and because we like speaking to people. It's just that on constantly is a difficult thing to live with.
Yeah. It's like we are like, you know, humans are like social animals, right? But like, it's like just the week just gone. I had like 4 nights in a row where I was kind of out seeing different people every night, and some people I hadn't seen, and I had all my pals from uni. Just coincidentally, we were all in Edinburgh. Like everyone's kind of dotted around the UK, and everyone just happened to be in Edinburgh on Saturday, and it was all, we hadn't seen each other in like 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And I'd seen other people, and so it was like 4 days of lots of fun, like just having a laugh, a few drinks, chatting, lot of socialising. And then on Sunday night, I got back from work, and I was actually like, I'm turning everything off. I'm not commuting. I do not want to commute. Like, it was really, really nice, but I've used every ounce of my social battery that I need some time alone. So, do you know what I mean? It's kind of, I think hospitality is like, that's kind of what, and you probably have the exact same thing, where it's your social battery is just done because of the service you have to provide at work.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not enjoying it at the time. It just means you need to kind of give yourself a bit of time to recover from it.
Recharge that battery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I reckon. Is there anything else you want to touch on? Like again, Lewis, if you tell them like, I'm here. If anybody's ever struggling with anything, please feel free to message me. Like, trust me, you're not going to be a bother. You're not going to be a hindrance, even though it maybe sounds like I've just said you would be. And I'm sure Lewis is the same. Like, if you are struggling with something, like, just reach out. We'll happily talk. And if you're one of Lewis's pals and you want to reach out to me, honestly, my door's open. I'm more than happy to chat. I'm more than happy to just listen. Like, whatever. And don't worry, like, if you want to talk to me as well and you're someone listening, I'm not going to make you come on the podcast to talk. Like, I'm definitely not going to do that. But,
tell
like,
me your life story.
yeah, tell me it. Why are you upset? Yeah.
Yeah,
And I guess, like, one of the little things, just to kind of, like, wrap this up and, like, kind of just finish on, like, you mentioned the, like, couple little culture differences about the cities. Like, what are some of the biggest differences you've noticed between, do you say Lewisham? That's how you say it, isn't it?
in London, yeah.
Yeah. There,
Yeah, Lewisham.
Dundee, Edinburgh. Like, what are some of, like, the biggest, like, in public cultural differences we'll talk about? Like, working, the pace, the clientele, the people,
I think,
without obviously throwing anybody under the bus.
yeah. I think one of the big differences between, apart from size, because obviously Dundee, London, and Edinburgh vary in size like greatly, but I think one of the differences that I've noticed between Edinburgh and Dundee is Edinburgh obviously is like international city, capital city. Not to say that Dundee isn't a multicultural city, like it definitely is. But I do think from my experience in Dundee, it's people who come to Dundee, their time is a bit more short-lived because they maybe come for the university. So they're here for 4, 5, 6 years and then they move somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I find in Dundee is that the kind of, it's probably a good thing as well, is like the people are constantly changing, but then there is this large amount of people who kind of just stay the same because they live in Dundee, their lives are in Dundee.
Yeah.
Edinburgh, there's a lot more different people, I would say, but then you see the same people less, which sometimes is a good thing. Sometimes
I was
it's a
about to
bad
ask
thing.
that. Like, is the repeat customer a lot less, like, smaller than Dundee?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Especially because of where we are, because we're like right in the city centre. I know that, like, I live just around the corner from a cafe called Little Fitzroy, and that's a much more kind of community focused cafe. I'll go and sit in there. I was literally there for 2 hours today, reading my book. But they have like quite a big group of regulars that come in every day. At Lowdown, we don't so much have that. We do have regulars that come in every day, but not to the same extent as like EH9 did, or this cafe just outside the centre does. But yeah, and I would say there's a lot more tourists in Edinburgh, and I expected tourists to be a lot nicer.
Yeah.
On the whole, to be honest. But yeah, I'd say that most of the times the regulars that we have are very, very nice, very respectful of the kind of service and what we provide, and show us a lot of respect and are kind to us, just like people were in Dundee basically every day. But the tourists in Edinburgh that come in, a lot of them come in and they're here for the city, they're not here for the service staff. Do you know what I mean?
I get that, yeah.
But yeah, that's not to say anything. That's not to try and like be negative about either city. I think Edinburgh's a great city. I think Dundee's a great city. I kind of was not over Dundee, but I think I just like, because I went to uni there and I had like a kind of solid group of people, and then uni finished, COVID happened, and I was the only one from my kind of group of friends that stayed there. So then it was kind of like, once lockdown happened, I was a little bit like, I kind of didn't really recognise the city, and I didn't have a kind of social routine anymore. And kind of had to build that up again. And I think just after a little while, I was a little bit like, okay, I think I'm ready to like try something new.
Yeah.
Edinburgh's got a great coffee scene. I've got lots of friends who moved to Edinburgh from school and from uni. So yeah, the move from Dundee to Edinburgh has been like difficult because any sort of like big change is difficult. Your support network changes, your environment changes, my work changed. But the city's class, and I was gonna try come back to Dundee today, and then it just like transpired that I couldn't, and I was actually a little bit sad that I couldn't come back for the day.
Yeah. Hey, that's honestly, that's brilliant, Lewis. And right, every time I wrap these podcasts up, right, I ask everybody the same question because I am fascinated by it. I don't know if you've listened to many, and I don't know if you've heard it, and I don't know if you've got a chance to think, and it is a bit of a on-the-spot question. But what do you think are traits, or what do you think it takes to be a good man?
I think to just be like a good person, I think kindness and compassion towards any person, anything, I think will do you pretty well. Like, I think if you approach any situation or any person with kindness and compassion, you're less like, it's not so much that you're definitely doing something right, but you're definitely not doing anything wrong. Does that make sense?
That. Yeah, I like that.
And like, yeah, I think that's kind of it, I would say.
I love that.
I think it's pretty simple. I think it's much easier to be a good person than it is to be a bad person. I think that it takes a lot of effort to be a bad person.
I love that. Genuinely love it.
Yeah. Yeah, just make anyone who's mature enough to make the choice to be kind and compassionate to the people around them. It's like getting all the basics right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Right, Lewis, it's your day off, so I'm not going to hold you up any longer. I can't believe that's an hour and 20 minutes. Hour and 20 minutes like that. It's been a pleasure, and I'm honestly like so buzzing.
Yeah, you too.
And such a good first person to have back on. Lewis, I don't know if you've got... What I'll do is I'll tag Instagrams. If you've got like a YouTube... I don't know if you've got any of that. Like, I'll get all your social media stuff when we come off. I'll put that down in the description below. Honestly, thank you so much for giving me that time. Such a good insight into coffee. Good, just general good chat. And I will be down at Lowdown. See you soon.
Lowdown, yeah.
Definitely. Right, my man. I'm going to pause this, or I'm going to hit stop. I'll have a little 5-minute chat with you, so don't you hit anything. But if there's anything you want to say before we go...
No, that's me. Man of
Sorted.
2 words.
Right, thanks so much, and I'll speak to you soon.